when we're thinking about firewalls and routes and all of that, essentially having the ability to connect to some application is a little bit different in the cloud than it is in a standard networking environment. So I have this Ubuntu host here and I installed Nginx on it. So if I just do systemctl status Nginx, we can see that it's running. Now, in a standard environment, what would we kind of do to figure out if this even allows Nginx? Well, we'd probably run a command like this, and we would see that the firewall that's associated in Ubuntu has a few different options available to enable Nginx access. So then we would run a command like this, and as we can see, the rules for IPv4 and IPv6 have been updated. And then we can, of course, confirm that, and here's the thing. We can see that the firewall is inactive. So realistically, this isn't going to do much for us. And even if it was active, it still wouldn't actually enable us to hit this Nginx box. Why is that? Well, let's head over to the AWS portal really quick. So I have this server here and it has this public IP address. So if I just copy this and try to run it, it's just going to essentially, circle ring of death type of deal. And the reason why is because if I go under security, I have this security group here. And if I open this up, we can see that I have inbound and outbound rules. Now I know, please don't yell at me. I have port 22 open on pretty much anybody can hit this box right now. This is just because it's a demo. Of course, this source should be the public IP address of your office or your home or whatever. But for demo purposes, this is just easier. Now, what's the big problem here? Well, number one, port 80 and port 443 aren't open. So for a web server like Nginx, you're not going to be able to hit the box regardless of if you have the internal Ubuntu firewall on or off. So if I go here and I click add rule, I can click the type here. And as you can see, we got a bunch of different types. Now, if I scroll all the way down, we see HTTP. We can enable that. And then because this is a web server, we want it to be from pretty much anywhere. And then we can do the same thing. We can add another rule here. We can do HTTPS. And then, of course, from anywhere. Now, depending on your environment and from a security standpoint, maybe you don't want port 80 open for anywhere. Maybe you want just HTTPS available. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and click Save Rules here. And now, as we can see, if we scroll down under inbound, our security group rules are set up for HTTP and HTTPS, aka port 80 and port 443, over pretty much anywhere. So now if I go back to my instances here, when I click on my new instance, I'm going to copy this IP address, I'm going to open up a web browser, I'm going to paste it in. And as we can see, our Nginx box is now up and running. And that's essentially how you can think about firewall rules inside of AWS. Now, heading over to Azure here a bit, let me go ahead and zoom in. It's essentially going to be the same thing. I'm not going to show it here because it's essentially the same. But if I go to networking, as you can see, I have some inbound rules. We can click, add an inbound rule. We can do the source for any specific IP address, etc. The source port, which could be, again, anywhere, and then the destination, the service, we could choose pretty much any of these services right here. For example, HTTP, and then we have that port there, or we could choose HTTPS. We have that port there, we click add. It's creating that security rule for us. Oop, forgot to change the name. It shouldn't be port 8080, but you get the point. Now we're going to have this new rule here for port 443. So essentially in AWS and in Azure, it's practically the same. When you're thinking about firewall rules and inbound and outbound connectivity, you're going to do it via software. And when I say software, I mean the actual services inside of Azure and inside of AWS.